I always walked home alone at night. It wasn't something I gave much thought to. My apartment was only a 15-minute walk from the small diner where I worked, and I'd been taking the same route for almost 2 years. It was quiet, predictable. I liked that, but on that particular night, something felt different. It was a little past 10, and the streets were empty. Just the occasional passing car, the dim glow of streetlights, and the faint sound of leaves scraping against the pavement. I had my earbuds in, the volume turned low enough to stay aware of my surroundings, but loud enough to drown out the silence. A few blocks in, I got the feeling. You know the one, that creeping awareness that you're being watched. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just an empty sidewalk and rows of parked cars. Still, I couldn't shake it. I kept walking, forcing myself to ignore the uneasy feeling settling in my gut. But then I heard it, footsteps. Faint but deliberate. I slowed down slightly, listening. The footsteps slowed too. I sped up. So did they. I turned my music off completely and glanced behind me again. That's when I saw him. A man, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s, walked about 30 feet behind me. He wasn't close enough to be a threat. Not yet, but something about him put me on edge. He wore a dark hoodie, jeans, hands stuffed in his pockets. His pace matched mine exactly. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe he just happened to be going in the same direction. But as I crossed the street to test my theory, I saw it, he crossed too. That's when the fear set in. I turned onto a side street, one I never took. He followed. I could feel my heart pounding now. This was real. This wasn't paranoia. I pulled my phone out, hands slightly unsteady, and called my roommate. The second she picked up, I forced my voice to stay calm. Hey, can you meet me outside? I think someone's following me. The moment those words left my mouth, the man stopped walking. Just like that. He stood there for a second, then turned around and walked the other way. I didn't wait to see where he went. I ran all the way home, barely stopping to breathe. When I reached my building, my roommate was already outside, confused and half asleep. I told her everything. She tried to reassure me, said it was probably just some guy heading home, said I was overthinking it. Maybe she was right. Maybe. But the next morning, when I stepped outside to head to work, I saw him again, standing across the street, watching. He didn't move. He didn't say anything, just stood there, waiting. I stood frozen at my front door, staring at him. The same man from last night. Same hoodie, same jeans, same unnerving stillness. He wasn't walking this time. He wasn't even pretending to be just another passerby. He was standing completely still, directly across the street, facing my building. Watching me, I felt my stomach drop. I glanced around, hoping, praying, that someone else had noticed him too. Maybe a neighbor leaving for work, a car pulling out of the lot. But there was no one, just me, him, and the silence of the early morning. I forced myself to move. I turned, locked the door behind me, and started walking. I kept my head down, gripping my bag a little tighter than usual. Maybe if I ignored him, he'd go away. But after about half a block, I gave in. I looked back. He was still there. And worse, he was walking now, following. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Okay, this was different. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. I pulled my phone out and texted my roommate. That guy is here again. He's following me. She didn't respond right away. I picked up my pace, pretending I wasn't panicking. The diner was only a few minutes away. If I could just get there, I'd be fine. Another quick glance over my shoulder. He was still there. Same distance, same slow, deliberate steps. Then my phone buzzed. Are you serious? Where? Walking to work. He's behind me. Same guy. Do you want me to call someone? I hesitated. I didn't know what to say. What was I supposed to do? Call the cops and tell them a man was walking in the same direction as me? I'd seen enough true crime stories to know they wouldn't do much unless something actually happened. So I said, I think I'll be fine. I'm almost at work. It was a lie. I wasn't fine. I was anything but fine. I reached the diner and hurried inside, the bell over the door ringing a little too loudly in the quiet morning. I turned, pretending to check my phone as I peered out the window. He had stopped walking. He was across the street now, standing near the bus stop, still watching. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. I headed straight to the back, where my coworker, Lisa, was setting up for the morning shift. She looked up and frowned. You okay? I hesitated, then shook my head. There's a guy outside, I said quietly. I think he's been following me. Lisa's expression changed instantly. She set down the stack of menus and walked toward the window. Where? I pointed. He was still there. Lisa's face darkened. That's weird as hell, right? My voice was shaky. She pulled out her phone. Do you want me to call someone? I hesitated again. I didn't want to overreact. But at the same time, every instinct in me was screaming that something was wrong. I don't know, I admitted. He hasn't done anything yet. Just standing there. Lisa crossed her arms, watching him through the glass. And then, as if he knew we were talking about him, he turned and walked away. I should have felt relieved. I wasn't, because even though he was gone, something told me this wasn't over. Not even close. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I kept glancing out the diner windows, expecting to see him again. But every time I looked, the street was empty. The morning rush came and went. Customers filled the booths. Lisa cracked jokes to lighten the mood, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was just some random guy. Maybe he wasn't even following me. But deep down, I knew better. By the time my shift ended, I felt exhausted, mentally more than physically. I kept thinking about the way he stood there, the way he matched my pace, the way he disappeared the second Lisa saw him. I didn't want to walk home alone. Not after last night. Lisa noticed my hesitation. Do you want me to walk with you? I almost said yes. But then I thought about it. If this guy really was following me, and I had Lisa walk me home, he'd know where she lived too. So instead, I forced a smile. I'll be fine. Lisa didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Text me when you get home. I promised I would. Then I stepped outside. The walk home was uneventful. No footsteps behind me. No shadowy figures lingering across the street. No sign of him. By the time I reached my apartment, I almost felt stupid for being so paranoid. Maybe he was just some guy waiting for the bus. Maybe I had been overreacting. I reached my door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. Relief flooded through me. Then my phone buzzed. Lisa, you good? I smiled a little, texting back. Yeah, made it home. Thanks. I tossed my bag onto the couch, kicked off my shoes, and went to the kitchen to get some water. I could finally relax. But then something caught my eye. My living room window. The blinds were slightly open, just enough to see outside. And through that small gap, I saw him, standing on the sidewalk, right outside my building. My stomach twisted. I dropped the glass I was holding, barely noticing the sound of it shattering against the floor. He was here. How did he know where I lived? I stepped back, pressing myself against the wall, heart hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and dialed my roommate. She picked up immediately. What's up? My voice came out barely above a whisper. He's outside. She didn't need me to explain. Call the cops. I hesitated. He hadn't done anything. He was just standing there, The police wouldn't take me seriously. I don't know if... I'm coming home, she cut me off. Don't move. Don't go near the window. The call ended. I sank to the floor, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't look outside again. Couldn't. 20 minutes passed before my roommate arrived. She slammed the front door behind her, locking it twice. She looked at me, eyes wide. He's gone. I exhaled, feeling the tension in my chest loosen just a little. Then she added, but I saw him. He was there. My blood ran cold. I wasn't imagining it. She saw him too. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured him, standing outside, waiting, watching. I wanted to believe that was the end of it, that he'd get bored, that he'd move on. But the next morning, I found a note, slipped under my door. For words, I know you see me. I stared at the note for what felt like forever. For words, that was it. I know you see me. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, like it had been written in a hurry. My hands trembled as I picked up the piece of paper. My roommate, Claire, was still asleep. It was early, barely past sunrise. I hadn't slept at all. Every creak of the apartment, every distant sound from the street below kept me on edge. I had hoped, prayed that last night was the end of it. That maybe he was just some creep getting a kick out of scaring me. But this note changed everything. This wasn't random. He had been here, right outside my door. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. I wanted to scream, wake Claire up, call the police, do something. But my body wouldn't move. I just stood there, gripping the note, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. The sudden noise nearly made me jump out of my skin. I pulled it out with shaking hands and saw a text. Did you like my note? The room spun. My knees nearly buckled. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I was going to be sick. I stared at the message, my mind racing. How did he get my number? My fingers hovered over the screen. Every instinct told me not to respond. But I needed answers. Who is this? A response came immediately. You already know. I felt lightheaded. I tightened my grip on my phone, forcing myself to breathe. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. This wasn't some guy who had just followed me home. He knew where I lived. He had my number, and he wanted me to know it. Another text. You looked so scared last night. It was cute. I dropped the phone like it burned me. My entire body was trembling now. That was it. I ran to Claire's room and flung the door open. She sat up instantly, groggy but alert. What the hell? I shoved the note at her. He was here. Her eyes flicked across the paper, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. What? I picked up my phone from the floor and showed her the texts. She went pale. This is messed up, she muttered. We're calling the cops. Now. We sat on the couch, waiting. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting to see a shadow pass by. Every sound from outside made me flinch. Claire sat beside me, her arms crossed, eyes locked on the door like she was daring him to try something. After what felt like an eternity, there was a knock. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Claire exhaled sharply. It's the cops. I took a shaky breath and opened the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway, both looking vaguely unimpressed. One was older, with graying hair and a tired expression. The other was younger, probably not much older than me. I handed them the note. Someone left this under our door. The older officer scanned it before glancing up. Did you see who left it? I shook my head. No, but I know who it was. I explained everything. The man outside my diner. The way he followed me home. The way he just stood there watching. The note. The texts. The younger officer took a few notes, nodding along. The older one just sighed. This is concerning, he admitted. But I felt my stomach drop. I already knew what he was about to say. But he hasn't actually done anything yet. I clenched my fists. He broke into our building. He left a note. He got my number. Isn't that something? The officer hesitated. We'll file a report, he said finally. We'll also request patrols in the area. If you see him again, call us immediately. That was it. No protection. No real action. Just a report. The officers left soon after, and Claire slammed the door behind them. They're useless, she snapped. I didn't respond. I just stared at the door, feeling numb. This wasn't over. I knew that now, and he knew it too. That night, I locked every window, checked the door 3 times, and sat awake in my bed, waiting. I wouldn't sleep, couldn't sleep. I needed to be ready. But sometime around 3 a.m., exhaustion caught up with me. My eyes grew heavy. My body slumped against the pillows. Just a few minutes. That's what I told myself. But when I woke up, my bedroom window was open, and there was another note on my nightstand. For more words, you left it unlocked. My hands were shaking as I picked up the note. You left it unlocked. The words blurred as I tried to process what they meant. He had been here, in my room, while I was sleeping. My stomach twisted. My vision swam. I wanted to scream, to run, to tear my apartment apart searching for him. Because if he got in once, who was to say he wasn't still here? I forced myself to move. I grabbed my phone and texted Claire with trembling fingers. Come to my room. Now. No response. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I swallowed hard and pushed myself out of bed. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to move. I had to check on her. I crept toward her door, every floorboard beneath me groaning louder than it should have. My fingers wrapped around the doorknob. I hesitated. Then slowly, I pushed it open. Claire was there, asleep. I exhaled shakily, the tension in my chest easing just a little. I wanted to wake her up. I wanted to tell her everything, but a deep, unsettling fear settled in my gut. He had been inside. He had been in my room, but I hadn't heard a thing. That meant he had been watching me sleep. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. I turned and hurried back to my room, locking the door behind me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, Claire was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee. The second she saw me, she frowned. You look awful. I didn't respond. I just placed the note in front of her. She read it, her face darkening. No, I nodded. He was inside? She asked, voice low. I nodded again. Claire stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. We're calling the cops again. The police arrived within 30 minutes. This time, they actually took it seriously. They checked the apartment, the locks, the windows. They found no signs of forced entry. The only possibility, I had actually left my window unlocked. But I knew I locked it. I knew I checked, which meant he had unlocked it himself. The officers took photos of the note, filed another report, and promised to increase patrols around our building. But that was it. No immediate arrests, no guarantees, just another report. I could see it in their faces. They thought I was just some paranoid girl who forgot to lock her window. Claire argued with them. She demanded more, but the police had already made up their minds. They left us with the same warning. If he comes back, call us. I wanted to believe that was enough, but I knew it wasn't. That night, I sat on the couch with Claire. Neither of us wanted to go to bed. The apartment felt different, not like home, like something had tainted it. I kept glancing at the windows, my skin crawling at the thought of him being on the other side, watching, waiting. At some point, exhaustion hit me hard. Claire must have noticed because she nudged me. Go sleep. I'll keep watch. I hesitated. I won't fall asleep, she said firmly. I'll wake you if anything happens. I wanted to protest, but my body ached for rest. So I nodded. I went to my room. I locked my door. I checked the window twice. Then finally I lay down. Sleep took me faster than I expected. I woke up to a noise, a soft, barely audible creak. My heart slammed into my ribs. I kept my breathing steady, forcing myself not to move. The room was dark, too dark. I had left my lamp on, but now it was off. I reached out for my phone, hands shaking, but before I could grab it, I heard a breath, not mine, his, right beside me. The next few seconds happened in a blur. I lunged for my lamp, hand fumbling for the switch. My fingers finally found it. Light flooded the room, the space beside my bed, where the breathing had come from, empty, but my closet door, wide open. My stomach clenched. My breath came in shallow gasps. I had closed that door. I was sure of it. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake Claire, call the cops, do something, but I couldn't move. My entire body was frozen in terror. Then, a voice, low, raspy, right behind me. You really should lock your door. I screamed. I don't even remember doing it, but the next thing I knew, Claire was bursting into my room. The closet was empty, the window open. He was gone. The police came again. This time they didn't hesitate. They took everything. The notes, my phone, the security footage from the apartment hallway. And that footage, it was the worst part, because at 3:15 a.m., the cameras caught something. A man, standing in the hallway, waiting. Then, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and unlocked my door. I nearly threw up when I saw it. He had a key, which meant he had been inside before, probably more than once. The police didn't give us much after that. They took it seriously this time. A real investigation. They promised they'd find him. But I already knew the truth. Even if they did, I'd never feel safe again. Claire and I moved out a week later. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. New apartment, new locks, new security system. But even now, months later, I still don't sleep through the night. Because sometimes, when it's late and the world is quiet, I swear I hear footsteps outside my door. And every time, I wonder if it's him.